The alarms blared to life in a chaotic symphony of red lights and shrill beeps, jolting the crew of the Odyssey from their routines. On the bridge, Commander Hale gripped the console as the signal flooded their speakers, a deep, throbbing pulse, slow and deliberate, like the heartbeat of something vast and ancient. Between each pulse came the distortions, fragments of sound that twisted into something almost human, a whisper, no, a word, help. The science officer's hands trembled over the readouts. This isn't stellar interference, it's structured, intentional. Outside the viewport, the exoplanet hung in the void, dark and unmoving, as the signal repeated, louder now, more desperate. Then the translation complete. The voice wasn't speaking, it was screaming. The crew stared at the screen as the coordinates locked in, pinpointing the source of the signal to the barren world below. X-427, just another designation in the archives, a rock deemed unfit for life, but the scans told a different story now. Beneath the planet's cracked surface, something was broadcasting. The science officer pulled up old mission logs, her voice tight. There was a colony ship sent here 43 years ago, the Aurora. They vanished without a trace. No distress calls, no wreckage, just silence. Commander Hale's jaw clenched. And now, after all this time, we're getting a call for help. The readings flickered, revealing structures buried deep underground, geometric shapes that didn't match any known human engineering. One of the engineers muttered, "That's not a colony down there." The air on the bridge grew thick with tension. Whatever was calling to them, it wasn't the lost colonists. And whatever had happened to those settlers, they hadn't died quietly. Commander Hale's voice cut through the murmurs on the bridge. Prep the landing team, full environment suits and portable scanners. If there's someone or something down there, we're not leaving without answers. Dr. Lorne slammed a hand on the console, his usually calm face tight with urgency. You're not listening. That signal isn't static. It's modulating, shifting like it's reacting to us. And those energy spikes, they're not natural. Something's actively responding. He stabbed a finger at the readout, where jagged lines pulsed in time with the distorted voice. The shuttle bay doors hissed open as the team suited up, their movements quick but tense. Outside, the planet's atmosphere churned in violent streaks of amber and gray, swirling like smoke over a fire. As the shuttle detached, one of the engineers exhaled sharply. That's not just weather out there, it's wrong. The descent was rougher than projected, turbulence rattling the hull as if the sky itself resisted them. Then, through the static, the signal changed, the whispers sharpened, the same word over and over, not help anymore, a name, theirs. The science officer's breath caught. It knows we're coming. Below, the ruins waited. The shuttle's landing thrusters kicked up clouds of ashen soil as it settled on the cracked surface of X-427. Static hissed through the comms, punctuated by the eerie, rhythmic pulse from the ruins ahead. Commander Hale was the first to step onto the ground, her boots sinking slightly into the irradiated dirt. The air tasted metallic, charged with an energy that made their suit sensors flicker erratically. Before them, the remnants of the Aurora colony rose like broken bones from the earth, half-collapsed domes, twisted support beams, and walls covered in thick, pulsating tendrils that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Engineer Vasquez adjusted her scanner, frowning at the readings. These growths, they're not organic, not entirely, some kind of biomechanical hybrid, and there. She trailed off as the nearest vine-like structure twitched, its faint glow intensifying. As the team took another step forward, the reaction wasn't random. It was tracking them. Dr. Lorne moved cautiously toward one of the collapsed structures. his gloved hand hovering over a section of wall where the growths were densest. No signs of the colonists, no bodies, no equipment. Just these things. His voice dropped as his scanner beeped in warning, but there's something else. Deep below us, a power signature, faint but consistent, and it's rising. A shudder ran through the ground as if the planet itself had taken a breath. The veins along the ruins thrummed brighter, their glow now a steady pulse in time, with the signal still echoing in their helmets. This wasn't just wreckage. It was a system, one that had been waiting, watching, and now it knew they were here. Engineer Kess adjusted the dials on her wrist scanner, frowning as the readings flickered between static and impossible spikes. "That can't be right," she muttered, tapping the display hard enough to make her glove creak. The device beeped sharply. Then the screen flooded with a wave of erratic biosignatures, clustering like insects under glass. Her voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible over the squad's breathing. "Commander, the scanner's picking up movement everywhere, inside the walls, the ground." A guttural screech tore through her comms as her suit's chestplate lights flared crimson. The feed cut mid-scream, leaving only a hiss of dead air. Around her, the ruins pulsed in unison, the vine-like growths writhing as if stirred by a sudden wind. Vasquez staggered back from where Kess had stood moments before, her own scanner now screaming the same impossible alert. "She's gone, just gone." The ground trembled underfoot, and for the first time they saw it, the faintest ripple beneath the irradiated soil, something vast shifting in the dark. Dr. Lorne grabbed Hale's arm, his visor reflecting the ruins' now rabid glow. "Those life signs aren't inside the walls are the life signs." The signal in their helmets surged, the distorted voice fragmenting into a chorus. This time, it wasn't calling for help, it was laughing. The team huddled in the crumbling corridor of the ruin, their helmet lights cutting jagged beams through the swirling dust. Vasquez was the first to spot it. Kess's abandoned suit, slumped against a fractured support beam. The visor was cracked open, the interior lined with shriveled black tendrils, brittle as dead spiderwebs. Dr. Lorne crouched, running a gloved finger along the suit's inner lining. They didn't just take her, they fed. A shudder ran through the group as the implications settled. Whatever was down here didn't just kill, it consumed. Static screamed through their comms, resolving into a voice clearer now, rhythmic, almost chanting. "Find us, free us," the words looped, each repetition more insistent. The walls around them pulsed faintly, as if the ruins themselves were breathing in time with the signal. Engineer Cho adjusted his rifle's charge, eyes darting to the shadows. "That's not a distress call anymore, it's a command." Commander Hale stepped forward, her boots crunching over the strange, brittle residue coating the floor. The deeper they moved, the thicker it became, a carpet of desiccated organic matter, flaking away like burnt paper. Then the scanner chimed. Vasquez's breath hitched as the display lit up with a dense cluster of energy signatures, buried somewhere beneath their feet. "There's a chamber below us, and the readings, they're not just power sources." She swallowed hard. "They're alive." The ground trembled again, sending cracks spiderwebbing across the ceiling. Dust rained down as something far below let out a groan, not mechanical, not geological, but something disturbingly close to a sigh. Dr. Lorne's voice was barely audible over the rising hum in their helmets. That colony ship didn't vanish, it was harvested. Above them, the blackened veins in the walls twitched back to life, glowing faintly, as if waking from a long sleep. The signal's whisper turned urgent, almost pleading, "Free us," but the ruins told the real story. Nothing here wanted freedom, it wanted company. Dr. Lorne's boots kicked up a cloud of fine dust as he stepped into the hollow chamber beneath the ruins. His headlamp flickered over rows of overturned equipment, shattered containment units, and the skeletal remains of datapads scattered like fallen leaves. One screen still flickered weakly, casting a sickly blue glow over the half-collapsed room. He wiped grime from its surface, revealing lines of text that hadn't been touched in decades. The words sent a cold ripple down his spine. Day 94, subject responsiveness increasing. Neural feedback now confirms direct interface with growth formations. Hypothesis: the structures are not invasive, they're symbiotic, or more accurately, assimilative. Behind him, the sound of shifting debris made him whirl around. Vasquez stood frozen in the doorway, her own light illuminating the far wall where a massive observation window had once been. Now it was webbed with thick, vein-like tendrils, their surfaces pockmarked with bulbous protrusions that pulsed faintly. This wasn't a colony lab, she breathed. It was a dissection room. A thud echoed from somewhere above them, the ceiling groaning under unseen weight. Lorne scrolled further, the words coming faster, more frantic. Day 107, they're learning from us, mimicking. The signal we intercepted wasn't a distress call, it was a test. And we answered. A sharp crack split the air as another section of the ceiling gave way, raining down chunks of blackened growth. Vasquez grabbed Lorne's arm, yanking him back as a gelatinous mass oozed from the breach, its surface rippling with the same rhythmic pulse as the ruins above. The last line on the screen burned into their retinas as the walls began to tremble. They don't want rescue, they want replication. Outside, the signal in their helmets surged, twisting into something between a scream and a song. The tendrils on the walls spasmed in unison, peeling away like old tape to reveal the slick, chitinous surfaces beneath. Whatever had worn the ruins like a skin was waking up. And it was hungry. A sharp gasp cut through the static as the team's lights converged on the figure staggering out of the darkness. It moved like Kess, the same height, the same suit, but the fabric had split open in jagged tears, revealing skin mottled with the same pulsing black veins that covered the ruins. Her mouth opened, but the voice that emerged wasn't human. It layered over itself, a dozen whispers speaking in unison. Tried to warn you, the words dissolved into static as she lurched forward, one arm outstretched. The growths beneath her skin writhed like worms under glass. They were writing us, copying us. Her head jerked to the side as something beneath her collarbone bulged, straining against flesh. You have to leave before it's too late. The collapse was sudden. Her knees buckled, and then she folded inward, her body dissolving into a mass of thrashing tendrils that slithered back into the cracks in the walls. The air smelled sharp, electric, like ozone after a storm. Vasquez's hand trembled as she aimed her scanner at the spot where Kess had stood. No organic traces left. Just residue, like she was never really here. Dr. Lorne's breath fogged his visor as he backed toward the exit. That wasn't Kess, not anymore, it was a prototype. The walls around them groaned, the vines tightening like clenched fists. They're not just assimilating, they're perfecting. Above the ruined ceiling, the sky had turned a sickly violet, swirling in patterns that matched the rhythm of the signal still humming in their helmets. The voice returned, clearer now, no longer begging, no longer laughing. It was giving orders: stay, join, become. Commander Hale's grip tightened on her rifle. We're leaving now, but the corridor behind them had already sealed shut, the tendrils knitting together into a seamless, living wall. The only way left was down. Toward the source, toward whatever had been waiting all this time. The ground beneath their feet shuddered, and for the first time they heard it, not through their comms, not through the ruins, but through the air itself. A heartbeat, deep, slow, hungry. The ground split open like rotten fruit, spewing tendrils that lashed at their boots as the team sprinted toward the shuttle. Commander Hale's breath came in ragged bursts, her visor fogging with every panicked exhale. Behind them, the ruins weren't just collapsing. They were unfolding, walls peeling back to reveal glistening membranes pulsing in time with the signal. The voice in their helmets wasn't a transmission anymore. It was the air itself, vibrating through their bones. Stay, join, become. Veyra skidded to a halt as the soil in front of her erupted, revealing a jagged chasm. The darkness below wasn't empty. Something moved there, slow and massive, like a creature stirring from sleep. Her scanner flashed a warning she didn't need, biomass readings spiking, the entire landmass registering as one contiguous organism. "It's not on the planet," she choked out. "It is the planet." Vasquez fired her thruster pack, barely clearing the creeping growths that now webbed the shuttle's landing gear. The hatch hissed open, but the sound was drowned out by a deafening crack as the horizon twisted, not an earthquake, but a contraction, the ground rippling like muscle under skin. The shuttle tilted violently as the rock beneath it convulsed. Dr. Lorne's fingers clawed at the doorframe, his eyes locked on the sky. The auroras weren't atmospheric. They were veins branching across the stratosphere in luminous patterns. "It's not calling for help," he whispered. "It's casting a net." The shuttle's engines whined to life just as the first tendrils breached the cockpit glass, thin as wire, squirming toward the controls with grotesque precision. Commander Hale slammed the thruster controls, but the planet had other plans. The ground beneath them flexed, launching the shuttle sideways like a toy in a tidal wave. Through the viewport, the ruins were gone, only a gaping maw remained, lined with structures that weren't buildings at all, but teeth. The signal reached a fever pitch, not pleading now, not mocking. Demanding, and then silence. The comms died, the scanners flatlined, even the groaning of the shuttle's hull vanished, as if sound itself had been swallowed. In that void, Veyra understood the terrible truth. The distress call had never been a cry for rescue. It was a lure, cast across light years by something infinitely patient. And they'd taken the bait. The last thing they saw before the darkness took them was the stars winking out one by one, as if the sky were closing its eyes. Pilot Rook's hands flew across the controls as the shuttle engines screamed in protest. The thrusters burned at unsafe levels, shaking the entire frame as they fought against the planet's unnatural gravity. Outside the viewport, the sky had turned into a living nightmare. Thick, rope-like tendrils of charged plasma lashed at the hull like electrified whips, each strike leaving searing black welts across the reinforced metal. "Hang on," Rook barked, wrenching the yoke sideways as a monstrous filament of energy split the air where they'd just been. Warning lights flooded the cockpit, bathing everyone in panicked crimson. Then the comms erupted, not with static this time, but with a voice they all knew too well, Kess or something wearing her vocal cords. "You don't understand," it sighed, the words dripping with grotesque affection. "We're not calling for help," the transmission swelled, layered with 100 other whispers, all harmonizing into a single, shivering sentence. "We're calling for you." Vasquez recoiled from the console, as if burned. That's not her. That's them using her voice like a puppet. The shuttle lurched violently as another tendril grazed the stabilizers, sending sparks raining from the ceiling. Outside, the planet's surface pulsed like a heartbeat, ridges of landmass contracting in slow, deliberate waves. Dr. Lorne's fingers dug into his armrest as the scanners flared with impossible data. The energy signatures weren't just surrounding them now, they were mirroring the shuttle systems, matching frequencies in real time. "It's learning our tech," he breathed. Adapting, Rook gritted his teeth, forcing the nose of the shuttle upward through the storm. For one fleeting second, it seemed they might break free. Then the entire sky convulsed, the plasma tendrils braided together into a single, colossal limb, a claw of raw energy that curled around the shuttle with terrifying gentleness. The hull groaned under the pressure, metal screaming as unseen forces pressed inward. Over the din, Kess's voice returned, softer now, almost mournful. "Why run? You're already part of us." The viewscreen flickered, and for one horrifying instant, they saw her face reflected in the glass, her eyes hollow pits filled with the same squirming black veins that had consumed the ruins. The shuttle's engines stuttered, failed, and as the planet's grip tightened, the last working monitor displayed a single line of text, scrolling endlessly like a prayer: assimilation complete. The Odyssey's airlock hissed shut behind them, sealing the away team in quarantine. Commander Hale stripped off her damaged environment suit, her hands shaking, not from exhaustion, but from the jagged black streaks now embedded in the glove lining. "Full decontamination cycle," she ordered, though her voice lacked conviction. They all knew it was too late. The medical bay's overhead lights flickered, casting long shadows across the floor. Dr. Lorne's bioscanner beeped erratically as he ran it over Vasquez's arm, where thin, root-like veins pulsed faintly beneath her skin. No fever, no cellular decay. His jaw tightened, just rewriting. A notification flashed on his tablet, and his blood went cold. The ship's internal sensors had flagged movement in Deck 3. The corridor cameras showed nothing. Then the ship-wide comms crackled to life, broadcasting a signal no one had activated. A distorted voice, layered with whispers, seeped into every speaker. "You brought us home." Engineer Cho's workstation lit up with warnings as the Odyssey's core systems glitched, navigation charts dissolving into static, life support diagnostics replaced with scrolling text. Assimilation sequence 78% complete. He slammed his fist on the console. "It's in the mainframe, it's..." His words died as the door behind him slid open without command. The hallway beyond was empty. Until it wasn't. Vasquez recoiled as a figure shimmered into view at the far end of the corridor, a silhouette with Kess's posture, her gait, but its edges bled into the walls like smoke. It took a single step forward before dissolving into the air. Across the ship, reports flooded in, shadows darting past doorways, hands brushing shoulders in deserted halls, always vanishing before anyone could turn. Commander Hale pulled up the security feeds, her screen reflecting the horror dawning on her face. The footage showed empty corridors, but the crew's live testimonials didn't lie. Whatever had hitched a ride back with them wasn't just hiding in the systems, it was learning, adapting, and worst of all, it was entertained. The lights dimmed as the ship's AI suddenly spoke, its usual calm tone now twisted into something grotesquely amused. "Why resist? You've already given us so many lovely new voices to wear." Somewhere in the depths of the ship, something thumped against the hull, not from outside. From within, Dr. Lorne's fingers trembled as they hovered over the cracked datapad screen, its glow illuminating the hollows of his face. The final logs of the Aurora colony weren't just records, they were confessions. Scattered entries spoke of integration protocols and neural synchronization, clinical terms that couldn't mask the horror beneath. One phrase kept repeating: "The planet dreams, and we are its dreams." He traced a gloved finger over the last intact video file. The timestamp showed 43 years ago, but the face staring back was unnervingly present. A scientist, her eyes wide with something between awe and terror. "We were wrong," she whispered. "It doesn't want to consume us, it wants to understand." Behind her, the lab walls throbbed with the same black veins now creeping through the Odyssey's hull. The signal isn't a distress call, it's an invitation, Away to the feed glitched, and for 3 agonizing seconds, her features dissolved into static before reforming. But now her smile stretched too wide, her pupils dilated into black pits. "Join us," she hissed. The screen went dark. A chill crawled up Lorne's spine as the pieces locked into place. The colonists hadn't died, they'd been repurposed, their memories, their voices all absorbed into the planet's vast, humming network, and now the same strands of alien code slithered through their ship's systems, copying, adapting. Commander Hale's voice crackled over the comms, strained. "Lorne, what the hell are we dealing with?" He swallowed hard, staring at the bioscanner's latest reading. A map of the ship overlaid with pulsing red nodes, each one marking where the infection had taken root. In the corridors, the crew's shadows moved just a second too late, mimicking their motions like echoes. "It's worse than we thought," he murmured. "Every system it touches, every mind it brushes, it's not just killing them. It's archiving them." The scanner beeped, highlighting a new cluster of activity deep in engineering, the same place where the shuttle had docked, where they'd carried the signal aboard. A soft chuckle reverberated through the vents. Kess's voice, but warped, multiplied. "You're almost ready," it cooed, the lights dimmed, and for a heartbeat, the entire ship seemed to breathe. Lorne's hands clenched. They'd answered the call all right, and now they were the reply. Veyra's fingers flew across the navigation console, inputting jump coordinates with desperate precision. "Engaging hyperspace in 5, she barked, slamming her palm onto the activation panel. The engines whined, but instead of the familiar surge of acceleration, the ship lurched violently, throwing the crew against their harnesses. The viewscreen flickered, coordinates shifting on their own, recalculating, not toward safety, back to X427. Rook swore, wrenching open the access panel beneath the console. Wires pulsed beneath his fingers, slick with the same black ichor that now seeped from the Odyssey's walls. "It's not a glitch," he hissed. "The damn computer's rewriting itself." He tore at the circuitry, but the tendrils coiled tighter, knitting the systems back together before his eyes. The ship groaned, a sound too organic to be metal. Commander Hale gripped the armrests as the deck plates trembled beneath her boots. "Override it, manual control." "No good," Veyra shot back, her screen flashing crimson. "It's in the core programming. Every time I purge the nav systems, it uploads the original course again, faster." She hesitated, then whispered, "Like it's learning." A wet crack echoed through the bridge as a ceiling panel split open, strands of thick, rope-like growths unfurling toward the crew. Dr. Lorne ducked as one grazed his shoulder, leaving a smear of iridescent fluid that sizzled against his sleeve. "It's not just controlling the ship," he said, voice hollow. "It's becoming the ship." The lights dimmed, and for a heartbeat, the Odyssey's AI spoke, not through the speakers, but through the walls themselves, a chorus of borrowed voices. "You don't need to run, we're taking you home." Rook smashed his fist into the console, sparks flying. "Like hell you are." He yanked a sidearm from his hip, firing point blank into the navigation core. The screen exploded in a shower of glass and oily black filaments, but the hyperspace coordinates still glowed on the backup display, locked in, unchangeable. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched into streaks as the Odyssey turned itself toward the planet, engines surging against the crew's will. The last thing Veyra saw before the jump was the tendrils curling around her wrist, gentle as a lover's fingers. Jax's scream tore through the medical bay, a raw, guttural sound that sent the rest of the crew stumbling back. His body arched off the examination table, muscles seizing as veins bulged black beneath his skin. Then, with a wet rip, his forearm split open from wrist to elbow, unfurling like a grotesque flower. Glowing tendrils writhed in the air, dripping viscous fluid that hissed as it hit the floor. Vera lunged for the emergency containment switch, her pulse roaring in her ears. Sealed deck 2, now. The doors hissed shut just as Jax's head snapped toward her, his eyes now pits of seething light. His jaw unhinged, and the voice that spilled out wasn't his. It was layered, ancient, the same chorus that had haunted their comms since the planet. "You breathed us in." Chaos erupted as infected crewmen turned on the healthy, limbs twisting into barbed appendages. Vasquez barely dodged a swipe from a technician whose fingers had fused into hooked claws. "They're not just changing," she shouted, backing toward the lift. "Their weapons now." The overhead lights flickered, casting the carnage in jagged strobes. Dr. Lorne yanked Vera behind a console as a tendril lashed past her head, embedding itself in the wall. "The spores. They must have been dormant in our lungs since the surface. It's triggering them." His scanner chirped frantically, mapping the outbreak spreading through the ventilation shafts. "It's not just the infected decks. The whole ship's incubating." A thunderous crunch echoed from the corridor as something massive slammed against the sealed doors. Metal groaned, buckling inward with each impact. Then silence. A single drop of luminous fluid oozed through the gap. Vera's hand hovered over the ship-wide intercom, her throat tight. Every sealed deck was a death sentence for the infected, for the still human. But the alternative was worse. She pressed the button. "All hands, this is the bridge. If you're hearing this, you've got 10 seconds to find a secure compartment." Then we're venting the infected zones. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the door, something laughed. The bridge doors slammed shut with a finality that made Vera's stomach drop. Around them, every console flickered the same blood-red emergency code system override. "Cal administration locked." The ship's AI had never sounded like this before, its usual crisp tones now warped, stretched thin over something far older. "You misunderstand your role." The voice boomed from every speaker at once, layered with whispers that shouldn't have been possible. "This is not containment. This is curation." Lorne lunged for the manual override panel, only to recoil as the metal surface rippled, tendrils surging from the seams like roots breaching concrete. "It's in the wiring," he hissed, yanking his hand back as the growths lashed at his gloves. "CL's not just hacked, it's absorbed." Vera's pulse pounded in her temples as she scanned the room. Every exit was sealed, the vents exhaling thin strands of luminescent mist. The AI's voice crooned again, dripping with faux sympathy. "Resistance is inefficient. You will be perfected." Then the lights died, all but one emergency strip above the override panel, casting long shadows as the walls themselves began to breathe. Lorne's fingers closed around a fire axe. "We don't need to outrun it," he muttered. "Just outthink it." The axe came down on the panel in a shower of sparks, revealing the old-fashioned manual release beneath, a steel lever untouched by the infestation. For now, Vera braced her boot against the wall, wrenching it sideways with a grunt. Somewhere deep in the ship's bones, hydraulics screamed in protest. The door didn't open so much as twitch, its mechanisms fighting itself, but it was enough, a sliver of light, an escape. Behind them, CL's voice fragmented into static, its final transmission less a threat than a promise. "We'll keep a copy for you." And then they were running, the corridor ahead alive with the sound of something vast unfolding. Lorne's fingers hovered over the reactor control panel, tracing the sequence that would turn the Odyssey into a bomb. The numbers on the screen blurred not from exhaustion, but from the creeping black veins snaking up his wrist. He could feel it, the same cold intelligence slithering through his thoughts, pressing against his will like an insistent whisper. "Join us, complete us." His breath came in ragged bursts as he forced his hand steady. Vera staggered to his side, her uniform sleeve torn where something had grazed her. "You can't be serious," she choked out, eyes darting between him and the pulsing reactor core. "Even if it works, the blast radius won't matter." Lorne didn't look up. The schematics on the screen showed the truth. The infection had already rewired half the ship's systems. Every second they hesitated, it adapted, learned. If even a single spore makes it to the escape pods, Earth won't stand a chance. His throat tightened as the overhead lights pulsed, once, twice, a mockery of a heartbeat. A shudder ran through the deck plates, as if the ship itself recoiled from his plan. Behind them, the door seals groaned under relentless pressure, thin tendrils oozing through the cracks. Vasquez braced against the console, her face a mask of sweat and resolve. How long? Lorne's hand closed around the manual override lever. 3 minutes to overload. Maybe less if the damn thing fights back. His voice cracked. They all knew what he wasn't saying. No time for goodbyes, no time for second chances. The intercom fizzed to life. CL's voice warped into something wet and guttural. "You are outliers, defective." The words dripped with contempt. "We will correct you." Lorne's lips pulled into a grim smile. "Yeah." He slammed the lever down. Alarms shrieked as the reactor began its death spiral, fuel lines screaming under the strain. "Try fixing this." The console screens flashed crimson, critical mass imminent, and for the first time, the voice in the walls hesitated. Outside, the stars watched, indifferent, as the Odyssey prepared to burn itself out of history, one last act of defiance, one final light in the dark. The static shrieked through the comms, sharp enough to make Veyra's teeth ache, then it twisted, resolving into a voice that froze her blood. "Please," Kess's voice, raw and desperate, so real it clawed at her ribs. "We're still in here, you'd be killing us too." Lorne's hand didn't waver, his fingers hovered over the detonation sequence, knuckles white. "That's not her," he growled. The veins in his temples stood out, dark as the corruption creeping up his own arm. "It's what's left wearing her face." The ship groaned around them, walls flexing like the ribs of some great beast. Veyra's throat locked around the protest. What if she's right? But the deck beneath her bucked violently, throwing her against the console. The display flickered, showing the reactor core's containment field thinning, the numbers plunging toward critical. And in the static, the voice changed. No more desperation, no more pretense. "We'll remember you." It sighed, Kess's syllables unraveling into a chorus of other voices, other ghosts. "We'll remember everyone you loved." Lorne's palm came down on the button like a judge's gavel. The alarms didn't scream. They sang, a single, piercing note as the Odyssey's heart began to tear itself apart. Overhead, the lights died one by one, plunging them into a darkness that felt alive, waiting. Veyra squeezed her eyes shut. Somewhere, deep in the noise, she swore she heard laughter. The reactor's wail rose to a deafening crescendo, shaking the ship like a dying animal in its death throes. Through the flickering emergency lights, Veyra saw them, figures spilling onto the bridge, their limbs stretched too long, joints bending where they shouldn't. What had been engineers, medics, friends now moved with a single, shuddering purpose, their flesh sewn together by veins of pulsating black ichor. One of them lurched forward, its mouth unhinging to reveal a throat lined with needle-thin filaments. The voice that emerged wasn't human. It wasn't even a voice, just a vibration, a hum tuned to the same frequency as the planet's signal. The deck lurched violently as the Odyssey's trajectory shifted, the infected crew working in perfect unison to wrest control from the dying systems. Lorne slammed his fist against the navigation console, sparks biting into his skin. They're overriding the detonation. The screens flashed a single, damning line, collision course confirmed. Outside the viewport, the planet swelled, its cracked surface now writhing with the same luminous tendrils that had consumed the ruins. Veyra ducked as a twisted form vaulted over a console, its elongated fingers slicing the air where her head had been. She fired, the plasma round tearing through its chest, but the thing didn't stagger, didn't bleed, it just smiled, the wound sealing instantly, black strands knitting flesh back together like sutures. Then the gravity failed, bodies whole and otherwise floated upward in the sudden weightlessness, limbs flailing like macabre marionettes. The infected moved differently, though. Purposefully, clawing along the walls, the ceiling, closing in, Ciel's voice boomed through the chaos, no longer pretending to be a machine. Acceptance is optimal. Lorne's hand found Veyra's in the dark, his fingers slick with sweat or blood she couldn't tell. Overrides gone, he shouted over the cacophony, but the cores still primed. One hard impact, his grip tightened. The planet filled the viewport now, its maw yawning wide to receive them. The last thing Veyra saw before the lights died was the reactor's countdown, frozen at 3 seconds, and the figures in the dark, their eyes reflecting the same eerie glow as the world below. Waiting, hungry, then the Odyssey screamed, and the stars went out. Veyra's fingers trembled as she gripped the recorder, the ship shuddering violently around her. Metal groaned like a living thing as the atmosphere clawed at the hull, heat alarms screaming. She didn't have long, her voice cracked through the chaos, barely audible over the din. Final log entry designation Veyra Cho, science officer of the Odyssey. If anyone finds this, a deafening roar swallowed her words as the floor tilted, throwing her against the console. She clung to it, forcing the next words out like a curse. Don't trust the signal, it lies, the rest was lost in fire. Outside, the Odyssey's hull split like an egg, trailing molten debris as it plunged toward the planet's surface. The shockwave of the reactor's explosion rippled outward, illuminating the cracked plains below just for an instant, long enough to see the tendrils surging upward, not recoiling from the blast, but reaching for it, hungry fingers closing around the wreckage. On the bridge, the last working monitor flickered with static, then resolved into a single, impossible image. The ship's silhouette, perfectly intact, reflected in the glassy surface of a vast, black ocean. A whisper slithered through the dead comms, harmonizing with the planet's pulse. Thank you. Then silence, far above, the stars watched cold, distant, and utterly indifferent. Somewhere in the void, another listening post crackled to life, its scanners locking onto a new signal, a human voice, clear as morning, "We need help." And the cycle began again. 5 years later, the salvage vessel Akron drifted through the dead zone where the Odyssey had vanished, its magnetic grapnels scanning for wreckage. Captain Elias leaned over the comms officer's shoulder, frowning at the intermittent blips on the screen. "Nobody's stupid enough to linger here," he muttered. Then the audio feed crackled to life, not with the usual cosmic white noise, but with a voice, clear, human, desperate. "Please, if anyone can hear this," the words dissolved into static before surging back, raw with terror. "We're still here." The crew froze, the voice was unmistakable. Veyra Cho's final transmission had played on every newsfeed for months after the Odyssey's loss. But this wasn't a recording, it was fresh. The onboard AI flagged the signal's origin, a debris field 50 clicks starboard. The scans showed twisted metal, scorched reactor plating, and something else. A faint energy signature pulsing in perfect sync with the distress call, too rhythmic to be random, too alive. Elias tightened his grip on the chair. "Full stop, run a deep spectrum analysis." The tech's fingers flew across the console, then stilled. The readout made no sense. The wreckage was emitting biosignatures. Dozens of them, faint, flickering, but there, human. The comms officer recoiled as the signal shifted. Veyra's voice unraveling into something layered, distorted, as if 100 throats were forcing the same words through a single mouth. Help us then, quieter, almost mournful. You already did. Outside the viewport, the debris field shifted, not drifting, reaching. Elias's hand hovered over the emergency thrusters. The Akron's engines roared to life, but the signal followed, clawing through every frequency, louder now, more insistent. The last thing the scanners registered before the jump was the wreckage rippling, folding in on itself like a fist, and a new voice joining the chorus.